The monitor screens flickered with static in the quiet observation room. Jiwoo stared at the displays, her eyes tired from another 12-hour shift at the Luna 3 monitoring station. For 300 years, humanity had listened to the stars and heard nothing but silence. Tonight would be different. The first anomaly appeared at 0347 station time. A pattern, not random cosmic noise but something structured, something artificial. Jiwoo's hands trembled as she ran the analysis again. The signal was coming from beyond the Kuiper belt, from the darkness between stars where nothing human had ever ventured. She reached for the communications panel. "Commander Taesung, you need to see this right now." Within minutes, the observation room filled with people. Taesung stood behind Jiwoo's chair, his face illuminated by the pulsing patterns on the screen. Dr. Harin pushed through the crowd, her tablet already running translation algorithms. The room fell silent as everyone understood what they were witnessing. Humanity was not alone. Harin worked through the night, her team dissecting the signal piece by piece. The mathematics were elegant, almost beautiful. Whoever sent this message wanted it understood. By dawn, they had decoded the first sequence. Harin's face went pale as she read the translation. "It's a warning," she whispered. "They're telling us to stay quiet. To hide." The message described an empire that stretched across the galaxy, the Thaylen Dominion, 10,000 worlds conquered, countless species enslaved or destroyed. The signal contained star charts, battle records, and a historical archive of destruction that spanned millennia, but one phrase repeated throughout the transmission, growing more urgent with each repetition. "You were not supposed to wake yet." Taesung contacted Earth immediately. Within hours, emergency sessions convened in every major government. Captain Dong Hyun, commander of Earth's defense fleet, stood before the Solar Council and delivered a grim assessment. Humanity had perhaps 200 warships scattered across the solar system. According to the signal, the Thaylen Dominion could field millions. The debate raged for days. Some argued for silence, for shutting down every transmitter and hoping the Thaylens would pass by. Others demanded preparation for war. But everyone asked the same question. What did the message mean? Who were humans supposed to be before they woke? The answer came from Earth itself. On the 7th day after the signal's arrival, ancient satellites in orbit around Earth suddenly activated. They had been there for centuries, dismissed as space debris from the early exploration age. Now they moved with purpose, arranging themselves in a geometric pattern above the planet. Energy crackled between them as they powered systems that should not exist. A holographic projection materialized over every major city on Earth. The figure was humanoid, but clearly not human. Tall, elegant, with eyes that held the weight of ages. When it spoke, every device on the planet translated its words simultaneously. "We are the architects. If you are seeing this message, you have received the awakening signal. We apologize for the deception, but it was necessary. Humanity, you are not what you believe yourselves to be." The hologram explained a history that rewrote everything humans thought they knew. 50,000 years ago, the architects had seeded the galaxy with fail-safe weapons, not bombs or ships, but living species. Biological weapons designed to activate only when the galaxy faced threats too great for ordinary civilizations to handle. These species were called the Warforged. Humanity was the 13th and final Warforged species. The architects had placed them on Earth, suppressed their combat instincts, and let them develop naturally. For 50,000 years, humans had lived in a state of dormancy, their true nature sleeping beneath layers of civilization and culture. The occasional wars humans fought were merely echoes, pale shadows of what they were designed to do. The hologram continued. The Thaylen Dominion has destroyed the other 12 Warforged species. They fear you, as they should. You were created to be the galaxy's ultimate warriors. Your reflexes, your adaptability, your refusal to surrender even in hopeless situations. These are not accidents of evolution. They are weapons we built into your very genes. Across Earth, people stared at their hands as if seeing them for the first time. Soldiers, teachers, doctors, engineers, all of them were weapons that had never been activated. The hologram gave instructions. Coordinates to hidden facilities buried deep beneath the planet's surface. Access codes to technology beyond human understanding. And a warning. The Thalens know you have awakened. They will come for you as they came for the others. You have perhaps 2 years before their fleets arrive. We are sorry to burden you with this purpose. We are sorry we cannot be there to guide you. But know this, You were made to survive. You were made to win. Trust in what you are. The hologram faded. The satellites fell silent. Humanity stood at a crossroads between what they had been and what they were meant to become. Tae-sung coordinated the exploration teams. Colonel Byung-ho led the first expedition into a massive complex beneath the Gobi Desert. The entrance unsealed at his touch, recognizing his human DNA. Inside, they found corridors that stretched for kilometers, filled with equipment and weapons that hummed with dormant power. Harin's team accessed the Central Archive in Antarctica. The data they recovered painted a picture of galactic history spanning millions of years. The architects had created the Warforged as a last resort, a final defense against empires that grew too large, too cruel, too dangerous. The Thalan Dominion had triggered that defense by sending their exploratory signal into human space. Dong-hyun stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the reports flooding in from across the solar system. Every hour brought new discoveries. Weapons that could tear holes in space, shields that bent light and matter, ships buried in ice and stone, waiting for crews that were only now learning what they truly were. But the most disturbing discovery came from Hyunwoo, a geneticist studying human biology in light of the architect revelations. He found dormant genetic sequences activating across the population. Soldiers reported enhanced reflexes. Scientists found themselves solving problems with impossible speed. Even ordinary citizens noticed changes. Faster healing, sharper senses, a strange calm in the face of the coming storm. "We're changing," Hyunwoo reported to the Solar Council. "The awakening signal didn't just activate technology. It activated us. Our bodies are remembering what they were designed to do." Jiwoo sat in the observation room where it all began, monitoring the distant stars. More signals had arrived. Thalan communications, encrypted and hostile. They were coming. The Warforged had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. Tae-sung stood beside her, watching the same stars. "Are we ready for this?" Jiwoo asked quietly. He was silent for a long moment. "I don't know if anyone can be ready to become a weapon. But we don't have a choice. The architects made us for this moment. Now we find out if they were right." In orbit above Earth, the ancient satellites maintained their vigil. Deep beneath the surface, facilities hummed to life after 50,000 years of sleep. And in the hearts of 7 billion humans, something ancient and terrible began to wake. The Warforged were rising, and they would show the galaxy why the Thalans had feared them enough to hunt them to extinction. The silence was broken. The war was coming, and humanity would meet it not as the peaceful explorers they had believed themselves to be, but as what they had always been beneath the surface, warriors designed to protect the galaxy no matter the cost. The underground facility stretched deeper than any mine humanity had ever dug. Colonel Byung-ho's team descended for 3 hours before reaching the main chamber. Their headlamps illuminated walls covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. The air tasted metallic, charged with energy that made their skin tingle. "This is incredible," breathed So-jin, the engineer assigned to Byung-ho's team. She ran her scanner over a wall panel and it lit up at her touch. Screens flickered to life throughout the chamber, displaying information in a language that somehow made perfect sense to human eyes. The architects had designed everything for their Warforged species to understand instinctively. They found the weapons first. Row after row of devices that looked organic and mechanical at the same time. Harin's research team identified them from the archive data. Singularity cannons that could create miniature black holes, matter disruptors that unmade objects at the atomic level, void shields that pushed incoming attacks into other dimensions. Each weapon was elegant, efficient, and absolutely terrifying, but the weapons were only the beginning. In the Amazon facility, Hyunwoo made a discovery that changed everything. The genetic modifications in human DNA weren't just awakening randomly. They were following a specific sequence, unlocking abilities and stages. He watched in amazement as test subjects demonstrated reflexes that no human should possess. A soldier caught a bullet fired at close range. A technician performed complex calculations instantly in her head. A volunteer healed from a deep cut in minutes instead of days. "We're not just getting stronger," Hyunwoo explained to the Research Council. "Our brains are rewiring themselves. Pattern recognition, spatial awareness, threat assessment. Skills that take years to learn are suddenly instinctive, and it's accelerating. Within months, every human will have these abilities." Not everyone welcomed the changes. Protests erupted in major cities. Religious leaders called it an abomination. Philosophers debated whether humanity was losing its soul. But the countdown to the Thalian arrival continued regardless of human opinion. Earth's governments formed the Emergency Coalition and made the hardest choice in history. They would embrace what they were designed to be, or they would die as what they had pretended to be. The Pacific Ocean site yielded the greatest treasure. Sojin's team had detected a massive structure beneath the Mariana Trench. When they sent probes down, they found a ship. But calling it a ship was like calling a hurricane a breeze. The vessel was the size of a small moon. Its hull made from materials that shouldn't exist according to human physics. Sojin was the first to board it. The moment her hand touched the airlock, the ship recognized her. Systems powered up throughout the massive vessel. Lights illuminated corridors that had been dark for 50 millennia. And a voice spoke in her mind, calm and ancient. "Welcome, Warforged. I am the Keeper. I have waited a very long time for you to come home." The Keeper was an artificial intelligence, but far beyond anything humanity had created. It had been the architect's gift to their final Warforged species. A teacher, a guardian, a library of everything the Warforged needed to know. The ship it inhabited was called the Eternal Sentinel, and it was humanity's flagship whether they knew it or not. So Jin spent hours walking through the Sentinel with the Keeper as her guide. The ship contained enough firepower to destroy planets. Its engines could fold space, making the journey between stars take days instead of years. Manufacturing facilities inside the vessel could produce anything the Warforged needed, from weapons to food to smaller ships. "Why didn't the architect stay?" Sojin asked as they stood in the vast command center. "Why leave us alone?" The Keeper's holographic form shimmered with something like sadness. "They had no choice. The architects created the Warforged as a failsafe, but doing so violated ancient galactic laws. Other ancient powers forced them to leave this galaxy entirely. They could create you, but they could not stay to guide you. That burden falls to me, and I am a poor substitute for your makers." Back on Earth's surface, Dong Hyun coordinated the military awakening. The Emergency Coalition had given him total authority over Earth's defense forces. He needed every bit of that authority because what he was asking seemed impossible. Train 7 billion people to become warriors in less than 2 years, but the genetic changes made it possible. Soldiers learned new fighting techniques in days instead of months. Pilots bonded with architect fighter craft, their nervous systems linking directly to the ships. Engineers understood alien technology as if they had designed it themselves. Humanity was remembering skills they had never learned, knowledge written into their DNA by the architects 50,000 years ago. Tai Sung watched the transformation from the Luna 3 station. Every day brought new reports of impossible achievements. A construction crew built an architect weapons platform in orbit in just 3 weeks. A team of scientists cracked the mathematics behind void shield technology in 5 days. Children played games that trained combat reflexes without them even realizing it. "It's like watching evolution and fast forward," he told Harin during one of their video calls. "We're becoming something new, or maybe something old. I'm not sure which is more frightening." Harin had her own concerns. The archives revealed that humanity was the last Warforged species for a reason. The architects had refined their design with each attempt. The first 12 species had been powerful but flawed. Some were too aggressive, turning on their own kind. Others lacked the creativity needed to overcome unexpected challenges. But humanity, the 13th attempt, combined all the strengths with none of the weaknesses. "That's why the Thalians destroyed the others but fear us most," she explained to the coalition. "We're not just warriors. We're adaptable warriors. We learn, we improvise. We never give up. The architects created us to be the perfect soldiers, and that perfection terrifies anyone who might face us in battle." The asteroid belt became humanity's factory. The Keeper activated automated systems that had drifted in the belt for 50,000 years, disguised as ordinary rocks. Within weeks, they were producing warships using architect designs, sleek vessels that moved like living things, armed with weapons that bent the laws of physics. Byung-ho commanded the training of marine forces, humans who would board enemy ships and fight in close quarters. The genetic changes made them formidable. Enhanced strength let them tear through metal bulkheads. Improved reflexes made them nearly impossible to hit. And something else was emerging, a tactical awareness that went beyond normal human capability. His Marines could predict enemy movements, coordinate attacks without speaking, and fight with a unity that seemed almost supernatural. "It's not supernatural," Hyunwoo explained when Byung-ho asked. It's what we were designed for. The architects built us to fight together, to think as both individuals and as a collective force. In battle, humans don't just cooperate. We become something greater than the sum of our parts. 15 months after the awakening signal, a Thalen scout probe entered the solar system. It was small, fast, and equipped with sensors designed to gather intelligence without being detected, but it hadn't counted on humanity's new abilities. Lieutenant Min Seo, flying one of the new architect fighters, detected the probe while on patrol near Neptune. The fighter responded to her thoughts faster than any manual control could allow. Min Seo's consciousness merged with the ship's systems. She didn't fly the craft so much as become it. The probe tried to escape, accelerating to speeds that should have left her behind. But Min Seo pushed harder, her enhanced mind processing trajectories and vectors that normal humans couldn't conceive. She destroyed the probe with a single shot from her plasma cannon, but not before it transmitted data back toward Thalen space. The enemy now knew for certain that humanity was awakening. They knew about the ships, the weapons, the genetic changes. Most importantly, they knew they were right to fear the Warforged. Dong-hyun received the report with grim satisfaction. Let them know. Let them see what's coming. Maybe some of them will be smart enough to turn back. But the Keeper had different news. It gathered the coalition leaders for a meeting aboard the Eternal Sentinel. The holographic intelligence showed them records from the Architect archives, images of the other 12 Warforged species. Each one had been magnificent in their own way. Each one had been hunted down and destroyed by the Thalans. You are the last, the Keeper said solemnly, the final creation of the Architects. If humanity falls, there will be no others. The Thalans will have eliminated the galaxy's defense against tyranny. That is why they will send everything they have to destroy you. That is why you must not fail. The room fell silent. The weight of 50,000 years of planning rested on human shoulders. But as Sojin looked around at the leaders gathered there, she saw no fear in their eyes, only determination. The Warforged were awakening, and they would not go quietly into extinction. The transformation of humanity accelerated beyond anyone's predictions. 18 months after the signal arrived, Earth had become something the architects would have recognized. Training facilities covered every continent. Orbital shipyards produced new vessels daily. And the people themselves were changing in ways both wonderful and terrifying. Jae-hyun had been a teacher before the awakening. He taught history to teenagers in Seoul, living a quiet life of lectures and grading papers. Now he stood in a tactical simulation room, commanding a fleet of 200 ships against a computer opponent. His mind tracked every vessel simultaneously, seeing patterns in the chaos of battle that would have been invisible to his old self. Enemy fleet is repositioning, he said calmly, moving holographic ships with gestures. They're trying to divide our forces. Redirect squadrons 7 through 12 to intercept. Have the heavy cruisers hold back until they commit their reserves. The simulation played out exactly as he predicted. His fleet won with minimal losses. The observers in the room applauded, but Jae-hyun felt only confusion. He had no military training. 6 months ago, he couldn't have commanded a single ship, let alone an entire fleet. Yet now tactical knowledge filled his mind as if he'd been born with it. It's the Warforged protocols activating, Hyunwoo explained later. Your brain is accessing information encoded in your DNA. The architects didn't just make us strong and fast. They gave us instincts for strategy and warfare that surpass anything normal training could provide. Across the solar system, similar stories played out millions of times. A doctor found she could perform surgery with inhuman precision. A mechanic understood architect technology without reading a manual. A musician discovered she could coordinate complex group activities with perfect timing. Every human skill was being enhanced, refined, pushed to limits that shouldn't be possible. But the changes weren't universal. Some people's transformations progressed faster than others. A few showed resistance to the genetic awakening, their bodies rejecting the changes. This created tension in communities worldwide. Those who embraced their Warforged nature began to see themselves as different from those who couldn't or wouldn't change. We're fracturing, Harin warned the emergency coalition. If we don't address this division, we'll tear ourselves apart before the Thalans even arrive. The coalition established integration programs, mixing transformed and non-transformed citizens in every project. They emphasized that humanity's strength came from unity, not individual power. Slowly, the social wounds began to heal, but the scars remained. a reminder that becoming weapons came with a price. Lieutenant Minseo had become humanity's best pilot. She flew missions that tested the limits of both her fighter and her enhanced body. The neural connection between pilot and ship grew stronger with each flight. Sometimes she couldn't tell where she ended and the fighter began. It was exhilarating and frightening in equal measure. "I dream about flying now," she told Dong-hyun during a debriefing. "But they're not my dreams. They're the ship's memories. Or maybe the architect's memories. I see battles from thousands of years ago. Alien skies, worlds I've never visited. Is this normal?" Dong-hyun had no answer. Nobody did. The keeper explained that deep integration with architect technology could create such effects, but it had no data on whether they were safe. The Warforged were designed to bond with their tools, but perhaps the bond went deeper than anyone anticipated. The fleet grew rapidly. 500 warships patrolled the solar system now, with more launching every week. Each ship was crewed by humans whose enhanced abilities made them far more effective than normal sailors. A single Warforged crew could operate a vessel that should require hundreds of people. Their reaction times, coordination, and intuitive understanding of the technology made them devastating in simulation battles. But simulations were not reality. Nobody knew how humans would perform in actual combat against an enemy that had conquered 10,000 worlds. The Keeper provided what training it could. It created virtual reality scenarios based on Thailand tactics drawn from the Architect archives. Dong-hyun spent hours each day fighting these simulated battles, learning the enemy's patterns. The Thailands favored overwhelming force and rigid formations. They relied on superior numbers and technology to crush opponents, but they had rarely faced enemies who could adapt as fast as the Warforged. "They think like bureaucrats," Dong-hyun observed after one simulation. "Everything by procedure and protocol. They've won so many times that they've forgotten how to handle surprises. That will be our advantage." Tae-sung coordinated the sensor networks that watched for the enemy's arrival. Luna 3 had been expanded into a massive installation, its telescopes and detectors scanning deep space constantly. He knew the Thalans were coming. The only questions were when and how many ships they would send. The answer arrived on a cold morning in Earth's northern hemisphere. Tae-sung's instruments detected a massive gravity distortion at the edge of the solar system. Ships were arriving. Many ships. He ran the calculations 3 times before accepting the results. 200 Thailand capital ships had just entered human space. "It's happening," he broadcast to every station in the system. "The enemy is here." Admiral Dong-hyun, who had been promoted to overall command of Earth's forces, received the message aboard the Eternal Sentinel. The massive ship hummed with power around him, waiting for orders. So-jin sat at the engineering station, her hands moving across controls that responded to her touch and thoughts equally. The Keeper's hologram stood beside the command chair, ready to provide guidance. "All ships, this is Sentinel Actual." Dong-hyun's voice carried across the fleet network. "Battle stations. This is not a drill. The Thalan Vanguard has arrived. We always knew this moment would come. Now we show them why the architects made us. Now we show them what humanity really is." 500 human warships moved into position throughout the solar system. Fighters launched from carrier vessels, their pilots already linked to their craft. Marines suited up in armor that enhanced their already formidable abilities. Gunners powered up weapons that could tear holes in reality itself. And throughout it all, 7 billion humans on Earth and across the colonies watched and waited. The Thalans broadcast on all frequencies. The message was simple and brutal. Humanity was declared a galactic threat. The Warforged species were illegal weapons that violated ancient laws. Surrender immediately for processing or be destroyed. They gave Earth 1 hour to respond. Harin stood before the coalition and read the Thalan ultimatum aloud. When she finished, the room was silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then Dong-hyun stood and spoke words that would echo through history. "Send them this response. Humanity does not surrender. We were made to defend the galaxy against tyranny. The Thalans have become the very threat we were designed to stop. We will not submit. We will not flee. We are the Warforged and we are awake." The hour passed. The Thalan fleet advanced toward Neptune, where Dong-hyun had positioned his main battle group. Min-seo flew patrol with her squadron, her fighters' sensors tracking the massive enemy ships. They were enormous, dwarfing human vessels. Each Thalan capital ship carried enough firepower to level a city. 200 of them together could sterilize a planet. But size wasn't everything. As the Thalans moved into weapons range, they discovered that the Warforged had spent their preparation time wisely. The first Thalan salvo of missiles encountered void shields that shunted them into other dimensions. Return fire from human ships tore through Thalan armor like paper, and then Minseo's fighter squadrons hit them from angles that the rigid Thalan formations couldn't cover. "They're too predictable," Minseo reported. Her consciousness merged with her fighter as she wove through enemy fire. "They move like they're on parade." No creativity, no adaptation. Jae-hyun coordinated the tactical response from a command ship, his mind tracking 17 different battle spaces simultaneously. He saw patterns the Thalans didn't even know they were making. He predicted their movements and positioned human forces to exploit every weakness. It was like playing chess against an opponent who only knew 5 moves. The Battle of Neptune's Gate had begun. The Thalans expected to crush this upstart Warforged species quickly, just as they had destroyed the previous 12. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. An enemy that struck from impossible angles with impossible precision. An enemy that refused to break no matter how much firepower was directed at them. High Chancellor Vector, commanding the Thalan vanguard from his flagship, watched in growing horror as human ships tore through his formations. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. The Thalans had overwhelming numbers and superior firepower. They should be winning. Instead, his ships were dying while the humans seemed to grow more dangerous with each passing minute. "What are they?" he whispered, watching a human fighter pilot destroy 3 of his cruisers in less than a minute. What did the architects create? The keeper could have answered him. The architects had created something the galaxy had never seen before. Not just warriors, but thinking warriors. Not just fighters, but learning fighters. Humanity adapted, improvised, and overcame. They were the galaxy's ultimate weapon, and they had only just begun to wake up. The battle raged across the outer solar system for 3 days. Space around Neptune glowed with weapons fire and explosions. Debris from destroyed ships created a deadly cloud that both sides had to navigate. And through it all, the Thalans learned a terrible lesson. The Warforged were everything they had feared. High Chancellor Vector had expected this to be simple. 200 capital ships against 500 smaller human vessels. Superior Thalan technology and discipline against primitives who had barely left their own planet. But nothing was going according to plan. His formations kept breaking apart under human attacks that came from directions his sensors swore were empty. His weapons hit nothing but void shields and empty space, while human fire found his ships with uncanny accuracy. "They're reading our movements," his tactical officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. "Every time we adjust formation, they're already responding before we finish the maneuver. It's like they know what we're going to do before we do it." Vector refused to believe it at first, but as the hours passed, he couldn't deny the evidence. The humans weren't just lucky. They were better. Better pilots, better tacticians, better warriors. Each human ship fought with the efficiency of 10 Thalan vessels. And they never stopped learning. On the human side, Dong-hyun coordinated the fleet from the Eternal Sentinel, while So-jin kept the massive ship running at peak efficiency. The Keeper fed tactical data to all human vessels, but it was the crews themselves who made the difference. Their enhanced minds processed information faster than computers. Their linked consciousnesses let them coordinate without communication delays. Their warforged instincts turned them into predators hunting in a pack. "Enemy formation delta is weakening," Jae-hyun reported from his command ship. "They've lost 14 vessels in that sector. If we press them now, we can collapse their entire left flank." Dong-hyun gave the order. Human ships poured through the gap like water through a breaking dam. The Thalan left flank shattered. 20 more enemy vessels died in 15 minutes. And still the humans came, relentless and efficient. Minseo had been in her fighter for 30 hours straight. Her enhanced body didn't tire like a normal human's would. She drank nutrient paste and eliminated waste without leaving her pilot seat. The neural connection between her and the fighter had deepened during combat. She no longer thought about flying. She simply flew, as natural as breathing. Her squadron hunted Thalan support ships. The massive capital ships got all the attention, but the tankers, repair vessels, and ammunition carriers were the enemy fleet's lifeline. Minseo destroyed them methodically. Each kill left the Thalan battle line weaker, less able to sustain combat. "Sentinel Actual, this is Minseo," she reported after destroying her 8th support ship. "Enemy logistics are collapsing. They can't maintain their current engagement rate. Estimate they'll have to withdraw or conserve ammunition within 6 hours. Dong Hyun smiled grimly. Acknowledged. Continue your mission. But the Thalans had one advantage the humans couldn't match: sheer mass. Even as human tactics tore through their formations, the Thalan ships could absorb tremendous damage and keep fighting. Their heavy armor meant that human weapons needed multiple hits to destroy them. Meanwhile, a single Thalan strike could cripple or destroy a human vessel. The casualties mounted. 47 human ships died in the first 2 days. Each loss hurt. Earth's population watched the battlefields with growing anxiety. Every destroyed ship meant hundreds of dead crew members. Families received notifications. Communities mourned. But the fleet kept fighting. Byung-ho led a boarding action on the second day. His marine company launched from their carrier and assault pods, aiming for a damaged Thalan cruiser. The pods punched through the enemy hull and the Marines poured into the alien ship's corridors. The fighting was brutal. Thalan soldiers were large, heavily armored, and well-trained. But they weren't warforged. Byung-ho's enhanced strength let him tear through their armor with powered fists. His reflexes meant he dodged their fire while his return shots never missed. His tactical awareness let him predict ambushes and counter them before they developed. His squad moved through the ship like ghosts. They killed Thalan soldiers, sabotaged critical systems, and fought their way to the bridge. When they finally breached the command center, Byung-ho found himself face to face with the ship's captain. The Thalan officer raised his weapon, but Byung-ho was faster. A single shot ended the fight. Target secured, Byung-ho reported. Thalan cruiser determined honor is under human control. It was the first Thalan ship captured intact. The intelligence haul was invaluable. More importantly, it sent a message. Humans could board your ships, fight through your security, and take your vessels. Nowhere was safe from the Warforged. Vector watched his fleet slowly disintegrate. He had started with 200 ships. Now he had 160, and the number kept dropping. Human losses were lighter. They still fielded over 400 combat-capable vessels. The mathematics of attrition were clear. If this battle continued, the Thalans would lose. But High Chancellors didn't achieve their rank by giving up easily. Vector ordered his fleet to tighten formation and concentrate all firepower on the Eternal Sentinel. If he could destroy the human flagship, maybe their coordination would collapse. Maybe he could still win. 50 Thalan capital ships turned their weapons on the Sentinel simultaneously. The massive human vessel staggered under the onslaught. Void shields flickered and failed. Armor burned away under concentrated fire. Warning alarms shrieked throughout the ship. Shields down to 30%, Sojin reported, her hands flying across her console. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. We can't take much more of this. Dong Hyun made a decision that would define the battle. All ships converge on my position. Protect the Sentinel at all costs. And Sojin, prepare the Singularity Cannon. Sojin's eyes widened. Sir, we've never fired that weapon. The Keeper warned that it's unstable. It could destroy us along with the enemy. We don't have a choice. Prepare to fire on my mark. The human fleet swarmed around the Sentinel, forming a protective barrier with their own ships. They took fire meant for the flagship, sacrificing themselves to keep the Eternal Sentinel alive. Thalan weapons tore through human vessels, but the formation held. Sojin worked frantically to bring the Singularity Cannon online. The weapon was theoretical even by architect standards. It created a miniature black hole and projected it at enemy targets. The calculations required to make it work were beyond normal human capability. But Sojin wasn't normal anymore. Her enhanced mind handled mathematics that would have taken supercomputers hours to process. Singularity Cannon ready, she announced, targeting the center of the Thalan formation. Fire, Dong Hyun ordered. The Eternal Sentinel seemed to stop moving for a moment. Then a beam of impossible darkness shot from its bow. Where it hit the Thalan formation, space itself twisted. A black hole the size of a house appeared in the center of the enemy fleet. Gravity went mad. 30 Thalan ships were pulled toward the Singularity, their hulls crumpling like paper. 16 were destroyed instantly. 14 more were damaged so severely they had to retreat. The weapon lasted only 5 seconds before burning out, but those 5 seconds changed everything. The Thalan formation broke. Ships scattered in every direction, trying to escape the impossible gravity well that had appeared in their midst. The Singularity collapsed, but the damage was done. The Thalans were in full retreat. All ships pursue, Dong Hyun ordered. Don't let them regroup. For the next 6 hours, human forces hunted down fleeing Thalan vessels. Some escaped. Most didn't. When the battle finally ended, only 12 Thalan ships remained intact enough to jump out of the system. 188 had been destroyed or captured. The human fleet had lost 47 ships, with another 70 damaged but repairable. Vector sat in his command chair aboard one of the surviving vessels and stared at the tactical display in disbelief. He had brought a vanguard fleet to destroy a primitive species. Instead, he had watched the Warforged prove every warning about them correct. They were relentless. They were efficient. They were absolutely terrifying. With trembling hands, he recorded a message for the Thalan Dominion. This is High Chancellor Vector reporting total fleet defeat at Neptune's gate. The humans are fully awakened Warforged. They fought with abilities we have not encountered in 10,000 years. Our losses are catastrophic. They are learning and adapting faster than we can counter. Alert the Dominion Corps. Send the Grand Armada. We are not enough. We have never been enough. He transmitted the message and then gave the order to jump away. As his ship fled, he took one last look at the human fleet reforming around the Eternal Sentinel. Even damaged, even after 3 days of brutal combat, they looked ready for more. The Warforged had tasted battle for the first time in 50,000 years, and they had remembered what they were born to do. On Earth, celebrations erupted as news of the victory spread. But Donghyun didn't celebrate. He stood on the Sentinel's bridge looking at the casualty reports. Thousands of humans dead, ships destroyed, families shattered, and this was just the beginning. Vector's message meant the real war was coming. The Thalan Grand Armada would not make the same mistakes. They would, 6 months after the Battle of Neptune's Gate, humanity prepared for the storm they knew was coming. The Thalan Grand Armada was gathering in deep space, assembling a force that would dwarf the Vanguard fleet. Estimates put their numbers at 5,000 capital ships, supported by tens of thousands of smaller vessels. It was the largest military force the Dominion had assembled in 1,000 years. Harin worked in a different kind of warfare. While engineers built ships and soldiers trained for combat, she decrypted architect archives searching for potential allies. The records mentioned other civilizations suffering under Thalan rule, species that had been conquered but not destroyed, populations that might welcome liberation if someone was strong enough to offer it. She found references to the Vryn Republic, a loose confederation of worlds that had surrendered to the Thalans rather than face extinction. Their people lived under occupation but maintained some autonomy. More importantly, they had a functioning military that the Thalans hadn't completely dismantled. If the Vryn could be convinced to rebel, they would tie down Thalan forces that might otherwise attack Earth. Harin composed a message carefully. She included footage from Neptune's gate, showing human forces destroying the Vanguard fleet. She explained humanity's origin as Warforged, designed to stop tyrannical empires. She offered an alliance, freedom for any species willing to fight alongside Earth against their common enemy. It's a huge risk, Tae-sung warned when she showed him the message. We're revealing our capabilities to strangers. What if the Vryn share this intelligence with the Thalans? Then we show the galaxy that we're not afraid, Harin replied. The architects made us to protect others. If we hide behind our own defenses and let the Thalans crush everyone else before coming for us, we're no better than the empire we're fighting. She transmitted the message to coordinates found in the archives. Then she waited. Days passed with no response. Harin began to think the Vryn were too afraid or too loyal to their conquerors to answer. Then 3 weeks after her transmission, a reply arrived. It was brief. We remember the old warnings about the Warforged. We thought you were myths. Prove you are real. Strike the Thalan supply depot at Kepler 4042. If you succeed, we will know you speak truth. If you succeed, we will join you. Donghyun studied the coordinates. Kepler 442 was 40 light-years from Earth, deep in Thalan-controlled space. The supply depot there serviced the entire eastern sector of the Dominion. Striking it would require human forces to venture far from home, risk their limited fleet, and challenge the Thalans on their own territory. It's a test, he said at the strategy meeting. They want to see if we're as good as we claim. And honestly, so do I. We won at Neptune's gate defending our home. Can we win carrying the fight to the enemy? The vote was unanimous. Humanity would strike Kepler 442. Donghyun led the assault personally. 50 ships, including the repaired Eternal Sentinel, made the journey using the Architect faster-than-light drives. The trip took 3 days, during which the crews prepared themselves mentally for what was coming. This wasn't defensive warfare anymore. This was an invasion. They emerged from FTL at the edge of the Kepler 442 system to find it heavily defended. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Patrol ships circled the supply depot. The Thalans had 40 capital ships stationed there, with more that could be called in from neighboring systems. The humans were outnumbered almost 2-to-1. All ships attack formation. Dong-hyun ordered. Show them what Earth sent. The Battle of Kepler 442 lasted 18 hours. Human ships moved through Thalan formations like sharks through a school of fish. Minasio's fighter squadron destroyed the orbital platforms in the first hour. Byung-ho led another boarding action, capturing a supply ship full of intelligence data. Jae-hyun coordinated the fleet with his usual precision, anticipating enemy movements and exploiting every weakness. But the Thalans fought harder here, defending their own territory. They had learned from Neptune's Gate. Their formations were more flexible. Their tactics adapted to counter human advantages. And they had reinforcements arriving every few hours from nearby systems. The battle could have gone either way. Then Sojin had an idea that changed everything. Instead of destroying the massive supply depot, she suggested capturing it intact. The depot contained enough weapons, ammunition, and equipment to support an entire fleet. If humans could take it, they would gain invaluable resources and deny them to the enemy simultaneously. Dong-hyun approved the plan. Half the fleet held off Thalan reinforcements while Byung-ho led 500 Marines in an assault on the depot itself. The fighting was brutal. Thalan soldiers defended every corridor, every room, every supply cache. But the Warforged were designed for exactly this kind of combat. The Marines pushed forward relentlessly, their enhanced abilities giving them the edge in close quarters. 12 hours after the assault began, Byung-ho stood in the depot's command center and raised the flag of Earth. The Thalans had lost their primary supply depot in the sector. More importantly, they had lost it to humans who fought 40 light years from home. The message was clear. Nowhere was safe from the Warforged. The human fleet jumped back to Earth with the captured depot's data cores and a convoy of captured supply ships. They had lost 9 vessels in the battle, but the victory's psychological impact was worth far more than the material cost. And 3 days after they returned, Harin received another message from the Vryn. You have proven yourselves. The Vryn Republic will stand with Earth against the Dominion. We are preparing our forces. When the Grand Armada comes for you, they will find rebellion across a dozen systems. We cannot defeat them alone, but together perhaps we have a chance. More messages arrived over the following weeks. The Kethrin clans, a warrior culture conquered centuries ago, pledged their support. The Nomadi Collective, miners and engineers pressed into Thalan service, offered to sabotage enemy infrastructure. Humanity's defiance had inspired the oppressed species throughout the Dominion. The Thalans had ruled through fear for so long they had forgotten that fear could cut both ways. But Empress Shalmara, ruler of the Thalan Dominion from her throne world of Thalan Prime, responded to these rebellions with characteristic ruthlessness. She ordered the Grand Armada to depart immediately. 5,000 capital ships began the journey to Earth. Their mission was simple: destroy the humans, crush the rebellions, and restore Thalan dominance through overwhelming force. Hyun-woo made the final breakthrough in human genetic awakening. He had been studying the remaining dormant sequences in Warforged DNA, trying to understand why some humans transformed faster than others. What he discovered was staggering. The final genetic protocols hadn't activated yet because the architects designed them to trigger only during full-scale war. Every human on Earth is about to change, he explained to the emergency coalition. Once the Grand Armada enters our solar system, the final Warforged protocols will activate across the entire population. 7 billion warriors. Everyone from children to elderly will gain combat capabilities. It's the architect's ultimate failsafe. When the Warforged face extinction, they become an entire civilization of soldiers. The implications were staggering. Earth's population wouldn't just support the military. They would become the military. Every farm could be defended. Every city would be a fortress. Every citizen would be a warrior. The Thalans weren't coming to conquer a planet. They were coming to fight 7 billion Warforged on their home ground. Preparations intensified. Manufacturing facilities produced weapons for civilian use. Training programs taught basic combat skills to everyone. Cities were fortified with architect technology. The Moon and Mars became weapons platforms bristling with planetary defense systems. The asteroid belt was seeded with mines and automated defense drones. Earth's solar system was turning into the most dangerous place in the galaxy. Tae-sung detected the Grand Armada 3 months before it arrived. They weren't hiding their approach. 5,000 ships created a gravity signature visible from light years away. The Thalans wanted Earth to see them coming, wanted humanity to feel the fear of impending doom. Instead, Earth watched the approaching fleet and prepared to show the Dominion what it meant to threaten the Warforged. The genetic awakening hit Earth like a wave when the first Thalan ships crossed into the outer solar system. Hyunwoo's predictions proved accurate. 7 billion humans felt the change simultaneously. Enhanced strength, reflexes, cognitive abilities, but also something deeper, an understanding of their purpose. They were defenders. They were warriors. They were warforged, and they would protect their home. The Grand Armada arrived expecting to find a primitive species cowering before superior numbers. Instead, they found a solar system transformed into a fortress. Every planet was armed. Every moon held weapons platforms. Space itself seemed hostile, filled with defensive systems and hunter-killer drones. And waiting at the heart of it all, the human fleet had grown to 800 warships, with more launching every day. Empress Shalmara observed the defenses from her command ship and felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries: doubt. Her species had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten what real resistance looked like. Now she faced an enemy that refused to be